Welcome to the Afterchat. I'm Michael,
I'm Madison.
and today we're going to be talking about burnout.
Ooh,
We've all been there.
we have.
All right, you ready?
I am.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Afterchat. Real questions. Real talk. Real life.
What's been the highlight of your week?
So I just finished my very last week in this like temporary small group that I have been in. It's the course From the Inside Out.
Yeah.
I think it's Renovare. What I don't know. It's
in there.
like a curriculum, short term, 6-week. It was a great time. Me and my close friend Connie, we were the youngest folks in the room, but we had a blast. And like the other ladies who joined us, it was really great getting to know some new faces.
Yeah.
Like a shorter form commitment, I guess, to small groups. It was a
Yeah.
good time.
That's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
So
about
what
you?
was a little bit about like what did you study in it?
Oh, it's so it's like it's focused on spiritual formation. So like a lot of the weeks are like, what's your picture of God? What's your picture of yourself? How do you even follow Jesus? It's like kind of similar to practicing the way.
Okay.
But just formatted slightly differently. But like there's a video that you watch and they have some questions for you to discuss as a group, and there's usually like a cool prayer practice that you can
Nice.
do. So it's the second time I've gone through that course. And Beth has hosted it both times, our spiritual director here. So I'm trying to get familiar enough to where I could facilitate it on my own. And I just really enjoy the content. And I enjoy 6 weeks just feels really good.
Yeah.
Good chance to actually get to know someone.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I'm leaving that small group knowing some more women around me. And I think that's really fun. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Honestly, it was probably last night, so I've been really trying to be intentional about locking up my laptop around 6.
Nice.
And so last night was upstairs at my workstation working, and then closed it at 5:58, and Abigail, my youngest, fired up Fortnite and
Nice.
just hung out for a bit and just watched her play. She's actually really, really good at it and
Cool.
routinely wins like the 100-person battle royals that they have.
Yeah.
And she has a whole bunch of different skins like to make her character look different. So she was running around looking like Gwenpool and just dominating. And that was
cool.
a ton of fun that we did that before.
I love
making
watching
dinner.
people play video games. For some reason, I would rather watch somebody else play video games than me play them myself. Like I'll sometimes I'll like click on like videos on YouTube of people like like stream highlights and stuff from Twitch of them playing, and I'm like, man, I wish I was good, but it's so much more fun to watch somebody else.
I enjoy watching her.
Yeah.
I have games that I like to play,
Yeah.
but I never really clicked with Fortnite.
Yeah.
But she is amazing. So she was
Wow.
like, Pop, give it a whirl. And so I got on there and died. I was number 98 out of 100. So,
Sad.
but she dominates that game. So that
Nice.
was an absolute highlight of the week thus far.
Cool. Man.
So really enjoyed that. So we're going to be talking about burnout
We are.
and what that kind of looks like. And so what are some small signs that you are beginning to head in that direction?
I feel like I've finally actually gotten a little bit of a grasp on what that is that kind of helps me keep it in check. So I would say I tend to isolate myself. I stop responding to text messages that are like non-essential. Like I stop like dropping into like my friend, like the group chats that I have with my friends and
Okay.
the stuff that like is not as like necessary for communication. So I isolate myself a lot more. I tend to sort of just catch myself gravitating towards screens and like excess screen time in a way that I don't always like I don't always have to stop myself from doing it, like watching as much, or I guess maybe I have the desire to just have background noise all the time, I guess is maybe a better way to
Gotcha.
say it. Because it's not always like videos. Sometimes it's podcasts, or I just don't want quiet. And I don't really know why, because you would think if you're feeling burnout that you would want to avoid the chaos. I think it's like a dopamine hit of like, hey, my normal isn't really doing it for me, so I'm just
Yeah.
gonna fill my brain with as much chaos. I haven't figured out why I do that, but that would be two signs: isolation, excess screen time, background noise, um, and then I stop waking up as early, like,
Hmm.
because I function the best when I can wake up early in the morning, and that's like my peak, kind of my peak time. But the closer that I am to like burnout, I actually have trouble sleeping, or I sleep too much. It can be one or the other. So that kind of leads me to sleeping in longer in the mornings than I usually feel good doing. If that makes
So
sense.
whenever I deliberately avoid quiet, it's because usually it's because I don't want to face something that I know that I need to face, even if it is a sense of like I'm
Yep.
being overwhelmed, but I don't want to acknowledge it. So I'm going to
Yep.
play all of the things. But
Yeah.
that's also something that I get a lot of enjoyment from, like just having background noise while
Yeah.
I'm working.
It's
I
it's
literally
hard.
did it earlier. I was
Yeah.
sitting at the desk. I had my earbuds in, and I was just like crushing all of the
Yeah.
admin work that I needed to do. And so, but if I'm doing it, but I feel some sort of way about it, it's
Yeah.
usually I'm trying to avoid a particular feeling.
Sometimes it can be that there's like an emotion that I'm not really dealing with that I still need to process. Like that can mean other things.
Yeah.
It just also is a sign of burnout for me. But I also really enjoy having background noise in certain moments. So it's hard for me. That's like the one thing that I have to keep my eye on the most, especially because of the type of job that I have. I'm just sort of like, not to say it because I'm complaining. It's just you're on call a little bit more.
Yeah.
You can't really clock in and clock out. So it's a little bit, it's something that I have to keep an eye on really closely, and I don't always know what is causing it when it does go out of whack. But in general, like, I kind of gauge myself throughout the day as far as like what kind of background noise I gravitate towards. If it's more chaotic, then I'm like, oh, I don't know. Does that make sense? Like,
Oh, I mean, I put on trash whenever I'm doing it. So,
well,
so
sometimes
by
we do
trash,
want
I
that.
mean, I was listening to, this is silly, but like, I was listening to Maury Povich lie detector results while I was doing emails earlier.
Nice.
So, like, I mean, I like that. I
Yeah.
like the chaos in the background. It keeps my ADHD kind of
Yeah.
in check while I'm doing this. Otherwise, what I tend to do, especially if I'm feeling overwhelmed and
Yeah.
trying to and I'm shifting into burnout, I will work for a little bit and then pick up my phone and just mindlessly
Yeah.
scroll on social media. That is a big red flag for me that
Yep.
I'm feeling some sort of way if
Yeah.
I'm doing that. But if I have just a nonsense program on in the background,
Yeah.
that's usually a sign I'm actually feeling pretty good and firing
Huh.
on
Interesting.
all cylinders. But if
Yeah.
I don't and I have my phone,
Yeah.
that's one of the signs that I'm heading towards burnout.
I think it's probably also a little bit different because at this point I don't have any social media on my phone other than I have the YouTube app, which I don't really count as social media because I don't always interact with it as social media. It's more like
Yeah.
it's the only thing I don't watch Netflix, I don't watch Hulu, I don't watch shows on anything. I literally just watch YouTube, mostly like video essays and podcasts and stuff. So that's really the only thing that I can default to when I do want to sort of just doom scroll is YouTube. So maybe that's why it's the crazy background noise. I don't know. All
Gotcha.
I know is that my relationship with screens can go out of whack pretty quick.
So do you find it easy to say no to extra responsibilities?
I think it depends on
Who's asking?
who's asking and what the responsibility is.
Mm.
If it's something that I'm already very passionate about, then I have a harder time keeping that in check and saying no. And then if it's someone that I like deeply care about, it's not so much that I want it out of people pleasing, but it's out of because I've worked really hard on my people pleasing tendencies. I think it's more out of if I know they really need that help, I have a harder time figuring out, am I outpacing myself? Should I be the one to help? Like
Yeah.
practical, like house sitting for someone or babysitting for someone, or going over to like help a friend who needs help cleaning, stuff like that, like the being the hands and feet for people, that stuff. I can go in a little bit too hard on. I'm
Mm.
better at pacing myself as far as like work responsibilities, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I mean, for me, it really depends on who's asking and what the level of commitment is. If it's something, I mean, if it's something to genuinely help somebody,
Yeah.
I do have a hard time saying no to that.
And sometimes you do have to just dig deep.
Yes, I mean,
It depends.
yes. I mean, we are called to go out of our way to help
Yes. Yeah.
people. If it's work stuff, it really depends on who's asking and what the level of commitment is. But if it's just but I also weigh that against if someone asks for help, you
Yeah.
help.
Oh yeah.
That's just a Midwestern kind of
That's true.
thing.
And Southern thing too.
Yes.
Yeah, similar there. I am curious, is that a maybe like a more recent thing for you where you have been able to pace your yeses a little bit better? Maybe you have some reserve for the, hey, I need help right now. You have extra to give because you pace yourself better now.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like before?
One of the things that that I've always struggled with is the idea of being seen as lazy.
Mm.
One of the worst things that I have struggled with, like that I never would want to be said about me, is like, well, we found Hedrick dead and he was just being lazy and not working or being productive in some way.
Yeah.
So I would just take if somebody needed something, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
But so I had to work really hard to start saying no to some things. It just did not come natural to me at all. Because you never want to be seen as lazy.
That makes sense. I think mine was maybe more out of in the past when I've said yes too much. It was maybe more out of people pleasing, just wanting people to like me. And I feel like I've shifted out of that behavior a significant amount. However, it's still something that I have to keep my eye on. Pushing really hard into practicing like a true Sabbath is the best thing, in my opinion, that keeps that in check, because you only have so many hours in the week. If you have like a set 24 hours, I am not doing anything, then it's a whole lot harder to say yes too much when you have an entire 24 hours blocked off. But anyways.
No, lazy was a 4-letter word right there with all of the others.
Yeah.
Like
I get
growing
that.
up.
Yep.
So we thought that it would be helpful to kind of define what burnout is. So we're going to be, for the purposes of this episode, we're going to be looking to Dr. Archibald Hart.
Love that name, specifically
Such an awesome
Archibald.
name. No.
Good for him.
If I was to change my name. Archibald Hedrick. And I'd also want like a third or something back at the end of it.
I mean, it's unfair that we don't have that right now with our given names.
Yeah, I mean,
rude.
A little bit. So, Dr. Archibald Hart, is, I don't know if he's alive or dead, so I don't want to put him in the past tense, a Christian psychologist and expert on pastoral and spiritual fatigue. So he defined burnout as such. Burnout is a state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands, leading to a loss of motivation and effectiveness in ministry. Now, that's in a ministry context, but that could just easily be adapted to whatever work or vocation you happen to be in. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands, leading to a loss of motivation and effectiveness in your chosen profession.
I think too, I could also see a little bit of the effectiveness in ministry. I feel like we could broaden it to what is maybe your personal ministry.
Yeah.
Like maybe you're not as maybe you're not able to be as effective in checking in on your neighbors that you really care about and seeing
Yes.
how they're doing because you're just overwhelmed. So like it could be stuff outside of like your 9 to 5 too, I
Yes.
guess. Yeah.
So we are going to look at some folks in the Bible that demonstrated some degree of burnout.
Mm.
And I always think of Moses whenever anytime
That man
we
was
talk
going
about
through
this.
it.
No, and he said some things.
Yep.
So to set the stage, we're going to be looking in Numbers,
Mm.
the book of Numbers, for a lot of the stuff related to Moses. So Moses had been leading the Israelites through the wilderness after their escape from Egypt, but by this point, he had just been listening. And some of the verbiage they use, the people grumbling was a big one, but dealing with their constant complaints about food and water and all of the hardships that they faced. And in this chapter, the people are complaining again because that's kind of what they just did. And this time it was about their food. God had been giving them manna to eat, and they were over it. And so they were tired of eating it, and they started listing the things that they were longing for: meat and fish and cucumbers and melons and leeks and onions and garlic and all of the things that they had back in Egypt. And they would say, "Did you just bring us out here to die?" and all of this stuff. So in Numbers 11, 4-6, I have the New King James Version here. Now, the multitude who were among them yielded to intense craving. So the children of Israel also wept again and said, "Who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish we once ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our whole being is dried up. There is nothing at all except this manna before our eyes." And
Drama.
yes, and Moses is over it.
Yeah, I would be too. I don't blame him.
And so, verse 11 there in chapter 11. So Moses said to the Lord, "Why have you afflicted your servant? And why have I not found favor in your sight that you have laid the burden of all of these people on me?"
Poor guy. Poor guy.
So he just like, "Why have you cursed me with these folks?" And I mean, we all feel that way. Like, why do I literally said something about this the other day. I just typed "I quit" into chat, like not my work, but like being an adult.
Oh yeah.
Like I
Oh,
was
yeah.
just like, it was just another thing that had gone wrong with something that's going to be a repair that I have to make at the house. And it's just come after a long series of other things that have needed to be fixed.
Man.
And I just typed "I quit," and the person on the other end said, "What?" And I said, "Being an adult."
Yep.
Why do I have these burdens of home ownership?
It's not fair.
Like you just want to egad,
Yeah,
like, you know.
exactly.
And so that's kind of where Moses was at. Like he just felt like too much had been placed on him, and he was leading these and just leading these people was just a massive, unbearable weight. And so then he follows, "Did I conceive all these people? Did I begat them that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a guardian carries a nursing child to the land which you swore to their fathers?" Like,
Oh my gosh.
like I just love the raw nature of this prayer to
Yeah.
God. And so,
Man.
I mean, he's responsible for all of these people, and he's not feeling it like a parent, like trying to meet the endless needs and demands of their kids. And so then he carries on, "Where am I to get meat to give all these people? For they weep all over me, saying, 'Give us meat that we may eat.'" And he just feels adequate because he's not able to give these folks all of the things that they feel that they need. And I mean, it's not an unreasonable request.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to eat something else. And so I'm not able to bear all these people alone because the burden is too heavy for me. He's just feeling this pressure. And if you treat me like this one is sad, but if you treat me like this, please kill me here and now. If I have found favor in your sight, and do not let me see my wretchedness. He's just reached the lowest possible thing. He's like, I would rather die than keep listening to these people and carrying this responsibility.
Sounds like burnout to me.
I mean, dude is done.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just done. And I love this because instead of rebuking Moses here or coming down harshly or wagging of the finger, the Lord said to Moses, this is Numbers 11, verses 16 and 17. So the Lord said to Moses, gather to me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them. Bring them to the tabernacle of meeting, that they may stand there with you. Then I will come down and talk with you there. I will take of the Spirit that is upon you and will put the same upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you may not bear it yourself alone.
Oh.
He was never meant to do it all alone.
Yeah.
And so God said, bring the folks in. We're going to divvy this up so that way you're not carrying everything. And then God also, this is kind of like a little, I don't know, like a bait and switch situation. So I'm going to kind of combine a couple different parts here. So Numbers 18 through 20 and 30, Numbers 11, 18 through 20, and 31 and 32.
Okay.
Then you shall tell to the people, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall eat not 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, nor 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have despised the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why did we ever come out of Egypt? So they got an insane amount of quail. So much that it's described as being piled up about 2 cubits high in and around the camp. That's like 3 feet deep of quail.
Gosh.
I mean, they ain't, but
yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of quail.
that is a lot of quail. Now, what happened after they ate the quail? Now, this is 33 and 34. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was aroused against the people, and the Lord, this isn't funny, but like the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. So he called the name of that place Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people who had yielded to craving. So while the people were still chewing the quail, God's anger was kindled against them because of their greed and ungratefulness, and a severe plague struck the camp, leading to a lot of deaths. The place was called Kibroth Hattaavah, which means graves of craving, because the people who had given into their cravings were buried there. But that's just a weird little twist at the end.
Yeah.
But, burnout happens whenever we're starting to take on a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's too much for any one of us to bear alone. And, God never really intended for us to carry all of these things alone. And, Moses thought that the problems was all of his to solve, but God, if we take what we're feeling, I think that's one of the things that I love so much about that is he just went to the Lord and vented.
Yeah.
And God didn't say, like, who are you to talk to me that way?
Yeah.
He provided for him. He helped him. He listened to him. He already knew Moses was feeling that way. So if he went to the Lord and said anything else,
yeah,
he wouldn't have been being honest with God, but he also wouldn't have been honest with himself. It is okay to be honest whenever you are feeling overwhelmed and burnout, like you're carrying too much. So I love that example.
Man, that was such a great that was like the perfect example to kick us off on too.
Yeah.
Like that was great.
Thank you.
It makes me think of I'm trying to think of, I think it's called the Promised Land series maybe. There's this show on YouTube that I've watched, and they only have one episode out right now, but I think it's sort of similar to The Chosen, where they might be like crowdfunding to do a longer
Mm.
version of it. And the main guy in it who plays Moses is actually, he's also in The Chosen too. He's one of the, um, I think he's one of the Pharisees in The Chosen, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, it's this like comedy show that's like filmed like The Office style, where there's like a talking head moment for the
Oh,
characters, but it's all about like that like Joshua pops up in this episode. I
okay.
think Jethro and Miriam pop up in this episode, and like a lot of it centers around it's not this exact story, but it centers around Moses being like exhausted and frustrated and overwhelmed with the Israelites, and like he sort of spread some of the responsibility out between like Aaron and Miriam, and then I think he like is like taking Joshua under his wing. Anyways, it's hilarious. I'm describing it in a way that just sounds very like factual and boring, but it's genuinely like a really funny like Office style show about
I'm gonna
Moses.
check that
Anyways,
out tonight. That's on
yeah.
Netflix?
It's on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just I think it's just the Promised Land series.
Okay.
And it's only one episode, but it's like 30 minutes long or something. It's pretty good.
I
Anyways.
love that. I'm gonna check that out.
So I'm gonna talk about Paul. So this particular scripture that I'm going to read from is kind of similar, of like really saying exactly what's going on with him, but it seems like he's on like the tail end of his process a little bit more. He's a little bit more resolved in what is happening here. So he to me, this reads like he knows how to pace himself a little bit more. Like this is like what he's expressing, it's still a big deal, but he has wrestled with it and sort of figured out how he deals with it. So this is in one of his letters to the Corinthians. This is 2 Corinthians 12, verses 7 through 10. And this is Paul speaking. Therefore, in order to keep me from being conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." And I like this example in particular because I feel like it's something for us to lean on, as far as it's not like a sign of failure to experience
Yes.
burnout, or to even just have these extenuating circumstances that are kind of like continually sort of pulling you down into like exhaustion or emotional pain, or like we don't know what the thorn in his flesh was. We don't know if it was like a consistent like pain that he was like physical pain, or if it was maybe his mental health, like maybe he was experiencing some very severe depression, or I mean he went through a lot. We don't know what the thorn in his flesh
But that's
was
the
exactly.
genius of him not naming it,
Exactly.
because it allows you to project whatever the thing is that causes you to rely on God and his grace.
Yes. So like my example of this for myself would be I'm neurodivergent. I mean, I talk more about my ADHD, but I'm also autistic, and a big portion of what I deal with is I get very easily overwhelmed and overstimulated. And when I do hit that point, I'm like, I'm not helpful to anybody. I don't feel good. I need to go stare at a wall. And it can be really easy for me to kind of like just sort of feel like this is like something that I need to fix about myself. But like it's okay to pace myself and recognize when I am reaching kind of my threshold, and pull myself away and focus. Like that's the technique that I would use to help pace myself. But ultimately, like that decision itself is it's a weakness of mine compared to other people. They maybe have more in them that they can give, but because I can recognize it and I know, God, you have uniquely given me this situation, this life, I can recognize when I am able to like lean on God for rest or restoration or comfort, or like I'm trying to figure out another way to say it, but it's just better just to state what the scripture
Well,
actually says. Like that when I am weak, then he is strong. I'm strong. I am strong in this moment because I'm embracing my weakness and allowing God to make me stronger and to carry me through.
well, and what I would add to that is, one, you have to be willing to admit that there is something that you need to rely on God for.
Yes.
And that takes a measure of humility to be
Mhm.
able to even do that. Because one of the things that Jesus, we're going to talk a little bit about this when we do our Easter episode,
Mhm.
is the paradoxical work. Like Luther called God like a God of paradoxes.
Mhm.
So this is a paradox.
Yeah.
For when I am weak, then I am strong, because you've recognized whatever, we all have them.
Yep.
It's just whether or not we're willing to name them and admit them, and then submit them to God and allow him to carry us through those.
Yeah.
That's when you're going on nothing but faith. And when you are going on nothing but faith, that is when you are in fact at your strongest.
Yeah.
Jesus demonstrated victory over everything by submitting himself to
Mhm.
the cross.
Mm.
And so that it's the same principle there being acknowledged. I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties, for whenever I'm weak, I'm going on nothing but
Mhm.
nothing but my faith in God.
Yeah.
And so that's when you're at your most awesome and strong.
Yeah,
Love
it's sort of, to me, it's sort of this particular example from Paul sort of speaks to, well, what could it look like if you weren't in the trenches of burnout, and like right then,
Yes.
like maybe like long term, when you know how to navigate burnout better for you uniquely, this situation really speaks to that, embracing it for what it is, because you know that it teaches you to rely on God
Yes.
even more.
And
It's beautiful.
And even being able to say, I am burned out.
Yeah.
That requires you to admit something that you might not otherwise want to admit, because who wants to admit that they're feeling, I don't like it.
Mm-mm.
Whenever I have to, go and say, I would really rather not do all of these things, or I have to admit to myself that I'm doing something in a way that is causing me to be burned out because I
Yeah.
haven't managed myself well, or
Yeah.
I haven't managed my time well.
That's
or
what it is for me. I'm like, oh man, I have to admit it that I
Yes.
know better and I didn't do it.
that yes,
Yeah.
and then sometimes you have to admit I do in fact have too much on my plate.
Yeah.
It's usually that's only been the case for me like maybe a handful of times.
Mm.
The rest of the time I'm not managing myself
Yeah.
well.
Yep. That's so true. That's very true.
And I don't like that's where the mirror gets held up and you're like, dang it. Like
Rats.
so the next one we're going to look at, and I like this one because it's a little bit different of when the burnout happened. So we're going to be looking at Elijah in 1 Kings 18. So he just experienced literally one of the most incredible victories in his ministry. It was awesome. He called down fire from heaven in a dramatic showdown against the prophets of Baal.
Literally, it read like a soap opera.
Yeah, no, I mean there was trash talking and back and forth. It was awesome.
Yeah.
We talked about it. I don't remember what episode, but in a
neither.
previous one. But he called down fire from heaven in this awesome showdown, proving that the Lord is the one true God. Like he did it. Like God used him to do awesome things and showed up, and it was amazing. Then he prayed for rain, and after 3.5 years of a drought, God sent a heavy downpour, and
Crazy.
immediately after this incredibly high moment, Elijah just crashed emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So now we're in 1 Kings 19, 1 through 4. So, and now he's threatened and he's scared. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and she was kind of leading this one group. You can unpack that, but so that's kind of who they were. Like they were the leaders at the time. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, also how he had executed all the prophets with the sword, because he did do that, and it's crazy. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So let the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time." So basically, she's gonna reverse-aroo that back on him. And
Mhm.
so Queen Jezebel, all fired up, furious over Elijah's victories, threatens to kill him within 24 hours. And even after witnessing God's power, I mean, that's still scary.
Yeah.
I mean, he still has the leaders of the time coming after him. And so, he runs because
Who wouldn't?
who wouldn't?
Exactly.
I mean,
Your life is in danger.
So that's what you do.
Yeah.
And so 1 Kings 19, verse 3. And when he saw that, he arose and ran for his life and went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. So Elijah abandons his servant. He isolates himself, which often makes
that sounds familiar.
burnout worse. and then he ran 100 miles to Beersheba and physically drained and emotionally spent. So that's
a
one
lot.
of your things. You isolate.
I don't run.
No.
I don't run for 100 miles.
But
I
you
kinda wish I
isolate,
did, but-
and I do too if it's
Yep.
really, really bad.
Yeah.
So in verse 4, but he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he prayed that he might die and said, "It's enough. Now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers." He's just at his breaking point. He feels like a failure, probably because he gave in to fear, but I mean, who wouldn't?
Right,
you're
yeah.
scared. And he feels like a failure. He's overwhelmed by his circumstances and asks God to take his life. This is a classic sign of burnout, just
Mhm.
wishing that you didn't have to deal with anything anymore.
Yep.
And God's response, I love it. Verses 5 and 6. Then as he lay and slept under a broom tree, suddenly an angel touched him, and he said to him, "Arise and eat." Then he looked, and there by his head was a cake bread on coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. So before addressing Elijah's spiritual and emotional exhaustion, God got him some victuals and
Yeah.
got him a full belly. And I almost always feel better after I eat a little something.
Yep.
So he's like, "Okay, let's take care of you. Let's get you built back up."
Mm.
And then he got a good rest, and God provided meals through the angels. And sometimes burnout's caused by exhaustion, and the first step is sometimes refueling and resting.
Yeah.
And so, and then in verse 7, and the angel of the Lord came back the second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you." So
Wow.
he had to continuously start to learn to care for himself again.
I bet that was the best food he'd ever eaten in his
You
life.
know what? I bet it really was.
Man.
That was nice.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
And so, and then he got reconnected with God in verses 8 and 9. So he arose and he ate and he drank, and he went in the strength of the food 40 days and 40 nights as far as Horeb, the mountain of God. And
Wow.
there he went into a cave and spent the night there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And so God led Elijah to Mount Horeb, or Sinai, the very place where God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. When we are burned out, one of the best things that we can do is get some solid one-on-one time
That's good.
with the Lord.
Yeah.
Verses 11 and 12. Then he said, "Go and stand on the mountain before the Lord, and behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake, and after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire a still small voice." God showed him that his presence is not always found in the big miracles
Yeah.
like from heaven, but instead God spoke through a still small voice, and a reminder that Elijah needed quiet, personal connection with God, not just the big miracles that he had witnessed with the
Yeah.
calling down of the fire, but you have to look for him in the small things, the way he shows up, the way he provides for you,
Man.
or seeing what he's done in the life of others.
That's so
Like
good.
those are the things that can help avoid burnout. One of the things that I have in my coordinator channel on Polo, we have a staff one, but I also have one at my coordinator level where
Real quick, Marco Polo is
Oh,
an app
yes.
where you can send each other video messages
Yes.
instead of text-based messages.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And so we do this every week. There's like 2 or 3 of us that go in there and celebrate something awesome that they saw or experienced. And
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
it's a way whenever I do start to feel some sort of way, I can
Mm,
go there and say, look at where God worked through them today. Look at where God showed up for that person today. Look
yeah.
what God did by prompting this person to do this. And it's
That's really
awesome.
cool. That sounds similar to we have. I don't if anyone has ever been in the office space at our Powhatan campus. Our hallways are just like lined with pictures of people who have gotten baptized.
Yes.
And I know that the original reason why they were put up is because everybody needs a reason to remind
Yes.
themselves why it's worth it. So
Yes.
yeah, that sounds similar.
So
That's really cool.
for me that's very helpful. And
Yeah.
so one of the things here after that, he kind of got a perspective shift and
Mm.
a new and a fresh renewed calling and mission. So verses 15 and 16, then the Lord said to him, go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arise, anoint Hazael as king over Syria. Also you shall anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, as king over Israel, and Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel Mahola, you shall anoint as prophet in your place.
Mm.
So he got a new, renewed calling, helping him to refocus instead of staying in his discouragement that, yes, like you feel a sort of way, but you don't have to stay there. And then
Yeah.
he eventually introduces Elijah, who will eventually take Elijah's place. So he gave him somebody to pour
Yeah.
into to show that everything that he had been doing up to that point wasn't just in vain.
Mm.
And so,
That's awesome.
sometimes you feel the most burned out after your biggest
Yeah,
wins
that's true.
because you're just like, well, what could possibly compete with calling down
Yeah.
fire? And read it. It's an awesome story. And so where was he to go after that? But whenever we do get burned out or feel some sort of way, isolation can just make it worse. He left his
Yeah.
servant, ran 100 miles away, then camped out in a cave for a spell. And, but this also shows that one of the things that you can do is start taking care of yourself.
Yeah. That's true.
Start taking care of yourself. And also that burnout isn't just the end of the story. Like if you do have an emotional burnout period or spiritual burnout period, it doesn't have to be the end. Like ask God where he wants you to go next,
Yeah.
because he will answer in some way.
I like that, like, yes, I think it's important to take care of yourself, and I think that that's something that everybody should be consciously doing to make sure that they can be the person that they want to be for other people. But I think it's really interesting that he didn't have to do it for himself. Like God provided what he needed for him in
Yes.
the moment in a way where I'm like, sometimes I wonder, and it's similar to the isolation. Isolation makes it worse. Maybe like sort of like white knuckling it. I have to take care of myself. I have to do it for myself. Can, depending on your situation, can maybe sink you further into burnout instead of just being willing to release and say, God, I know that you'll provide, or ask for help, or like
Yes.
ask for support in some way of like, I've been running around all week long and I don't know what I'm going to have for dinner and the kids are screaming and whatever. Will you just come over and sit with me? Like
Yes.
that kind of stuff. Like, I think, I think it's just really beautiful that God met his needs in a way where he didn't necessarily have to even really think about it.
And again, he wasn't scolded or shamed or made
Yeah.
to feel bad. He actually did tell God what he was thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
It started with being honest with himself and
Yeah.
with God about the way that he actually felt. He wasn't ignoring it.
Yeah.
He actually named
Yeah.
the things.
Yeah. That's
So
true.
always name it.
That leads us really well into this next example. So this is Jesus. Now Jesus was perfect, so he had a little bit more going for him than than we might as far as burnout goes. But we can look to the way that he lived his life and
He
the
still
example.
experienced it.
Yeah, he still experienced exhaustion and emotional turmoil, but we can look to his example of how he handled it as the ultimate example of how we should handle our exhaustion and grief and big feelings. I'll just say big feelings across the board. So I'm going to be reading from Mark chapter 14, picking up in verse 32. The context of this is Jesus is like genuinely just about to be crucified. And he knows it. He knows he's about to be betrayed by one of his disciples, which I feel like is really easy for us to kind of breeze by, like, oh, Judas was the betrayer. Like, he knew one of his close friends that he cared about deeply was about to like hand him over to be killed. Like, that's a big deal. And he also was thinking about, the heaviness of what he was going to experience physically. Anyways, picking up in verse 32, they, being Jesus and some of his disciples, they went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him and began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that, if possible, the hour might pass from him. "Abba, Father," he said, "everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Simon," he said to Peter, "are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. They did not know what to say to him. Returning the third time, he said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough, the hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." So, what I see from this example that Jesus gave to us is that he is, when he's experiencing his big emotions, he is immediately going to step away from his normal routine into silence and solitude and connection with God. However, this is not solitude in the sense of isolation. He's removing himself for the purpose of interacting with God, and then he's going back to his people.
Yes.
And he has his people with him. They're just like over there, like a little bit of a distance away, so he can have the privacy in the moment.
That solid one-on-one time.
Yeah, so not that you have to like be around people all the time if you feel like you're about to be burnt out. Like, solitude is still important. You just don't want to completely isolate. That's an example that I see. I see him being very, very honest about his feelings, like we've seen in some of the other folks. And I have also seen him like directly asking his people for support and for prayer, and being pretty clear about what his expectations are with them. And granted, they were not able to stay awake because their eyelids were heavy and they were sweepy. They were just little sweepy boys. Anyways, he was just being that was weird of me to do.
But I mean, he was being honest with him.
He was being honest with him, and he was setting very clear expectations out of what he needed from his support system. Maybe that's a good way to say it.
Yes.
And he also faces what he's got going head on. So granted, this is a different situation than like true burnout, because he's about to face being betrayed and being killed on the cross. Like he's about to die. It's a little bit of a different situation, but I think the example, like,
I think just being overwhelmed by what he was facing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's the bigness of it all, the strong feelings of it all, being honest about where he was at, being clear about what his expectations were for his disciples, and then he just takes it on. Like he's like, "Okay, I'm ready to go." Like he knew what he needed to be able to face it. And I think that's where I think that's where we can kind of fall short sometimes, just within ourselves, of not knowing what it is that we need, not knowing ourselves well enough, or taking the time to sort of review maybe what has gone on in our past and what was helpful or beneficial or hurtful. Anyways.
No, that's a massive point.
Yeah.
You have to actually know. That's where brutal self-honesty really does come into help.
Yeah.
and naming your junk and not just ignoring it or
Yep.
expecting other people to be mind readers.
Yep.
You need to be able to effectively communicate, I feel this way because of X, and
Mhm.
actually examine what X is and where it came from.
Yeah. And if maybe like you're not there yet, then going through maybe a similar process like Elijah did, where maybe he didn't have the exact words of what he was experiencing, but he still followed the same rhythm of getting away from it all, resting, eating, like taking care of himself. Like they not all of these examples they were able to bounce back as quick as this example reads
Yeah.
of Jesus, in the same night being able to face it. But all of these people were able to face what was going on because they were honest about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I have felt it,
Mm.
it's typically whenever I'm not managing my time well, like I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
So I'm taking on things, but then probably not always prioritizing them in a way that's helpful.
Yeah.
Not adding whatever the new responsibilities are onto my Asana task list or my calendar.
Yep.
If it doesn't end up on one of those two things, I'm going to miss it.
Yeah.
I just am. And that's my thing to own. If I say yes to something, it then becomes my responsibility to work through whatever it is I committed to.
That's true.
So, one of the things I've just had to start doing it. If I'm having a conversation with somebody and they ask me to do something, I've just started taking out my phone and saying, "Hey, I'm not ignoring you, but if you want me to actually get this done, I have to put it on here,
Yeah.
or I'm going to miss it."
Yeah.
And I've not had anybody react poorly to that yet
Mm-mm.
because I'm telling them up front, I'm going to add that to my list right now.
Yeah.
So that way I can follow through and not let you down. That's been one of the biggest things that I've done. But whenever I have gotten poor, or whenever I have handled things poorly and not gotten it right, it's usually through some sort of mismanagement of my own time and calendar and schedule,
Yeah.
where I then have had to go back and play cleanup and say, "Hey, I'm sorry I missed this.
Yeah.
I'm getting it. I will get it to you, but it's now going to be late because I messed up."
Yeah.
And you have to own whatever your mistakes are or what your feelings are. And sometimes I have gone to someone and just said, "Hey, I know I cannot do this."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's never fun, but it's better than trying to manipulate or finagle something that's just not going to work out well in the end, especially when everybody around you already sees you struggling.
Yeah.
Because you might not think that you're acting burned out and like a crazy person, but I promise you, if you ask 3 people that are around you enough, they will say, "Hey, you know what? I think something might be off with Hedrick."
Yep. Yeah.
Or Madison. So
Yeah.
when you have felt it, what did you do?
So I most recently, I would say when I have felt it, I leaned more towards being honest with people that are around me about what I am experiencing. I think there's different versions of what burnout could look like, and I think that a lot of times I do think it comes from us just not taking care of ourselves, or um, having priorities that are maybe like out of whack. I think it can come from that, overcommitting. But sometimes it can come out of there's something on the horizon that is maybe I'm shifting. How am I going to say this in a way that makes any sense at all? I think that maybe some burnout within ourselves over our old rhythm could highlight what are the possibilities that I'm missing out on that God has uniquely set me up
Yes.
to be able to do for other people. Maybe it's a different season in your calling, stuff like that. There's a shift that's going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you can like dig yourself in deeper by just trying to force your way through it, or you can be honest about how you're feeling. So that's what I lean towards. I tell other people what's going on. I think particularly how I felt it recently in my job is just the fact of I work in tech, and oftentimes I'm the first one here. Whenever something is like a Sunday of an event or Sunday is happening or anything like that, I'm the first one in the building.
Yes.
And I am most often the last one to leave because you have to turn stuff on and you have to turn stuff off. So having a mindset, that, like an intentional mindset in those trigger moments where I could get burnout and sick of it, particularly when I'm walking into Powhatan campus at 4 a.m. on a Sunday morning, I have to watch my mindset. And so I walk in from my car, and I pray, and I've created a habit out of thanking God for the opportunity and the honor that it is to be the first one to walk into the building on a Sunday morning, and all of the prep work that goes into it. So yeah, being honest with other people and seeing what they can do to help me, because they have helped me a lot in those feelings, and also being intentional about my mindset.
Love it.
Yeah, that was long-winded.
So normally we would have a message clip in here, but one of our things that we want to encourage everybody to do is check out a spiritual disciplines video that we have from our Midlothian campus pastor, Angie Frame.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be one of the things that we're going to encourage everybody to go and check out. But after hearing all of this and us having this conversation, where do you, like, what is a practical takeaway?
I think this particular video on the spiritual discipline of rest, I think would be a really great specific thing to watch, but I would broaden out to, honestly, the entire playlist of the spiritual disciplines, which in the description, I'll have linked just the video, but then I'll also send everyone to the full playlist too.
Yeah.
I think the more that we are able to focus in on our spiritual disciplines, the way that we practice engaging with God's presence is an important part, because I think it also helps us learn ourselves more, and kind of be in more intuitive of, like, how are we doing? How are we feeling? I know I am I'm more self-aware, more able to gauge how I'm actually doing when I am really, like, honed in on my spiritual disciplines and spending time with God.
Yes.
And also, trying out new things, like seeing what maybe makes me feel more refreshed.
So I love it. The only other thing I would add is be willing to be brutally self-honest with yourself and with God about what it is that you're feeling whenever you start to feel some sort of way.
Yeah.
Too often, I know that this was true for me, and I'm just going to project that onto literally everybody that's out there. One of the things, I would always just try to stuff my feelings down.
Yeah.
And stiff upper lip it,
Yep.
and it's just not helpful.
Yeah.
Because everybody else already sees it and recognizes it.
Yeah.
But you're just not being honest with yourself. And if you're not being honest with yourself, you're also not going to be honest with God in prayer, because you're not actually telling him.
That's true.
And he already knows it. So you might
does.
as well say it. And that's one of the things that I loved about both Moses' prayer and Jesus' prayer and Elijah's prayer in these stories and examples that we looked at, is they didn't hide it.
Yeah.
Like, why? I didn't conceive these people. Why am I taking responsibility from them? Like,
Yep.
take this cup from me, but not my will, your own.
Yep.
They were honest in their approach to God.
Yeah.
And none of them were met with scorn or shame or guilt tripped or manipulated in any way. They were accepted and they were heard.
Yeah.
And God responded accordingly. So that would be the big takeaway for me from this.
Nice. That's
Love
good
it.
stuff.
So, we do have a couple reviews that we can share here. So
Exciting.
this one came from Jared Coder 3062 on YouTube. This was on our one on symbols and what they mean and things. Great content. Felt like I was in the room with you for the discussion. So my man Jared is going to get a mug sent out to him.
Nice.
And then for our episode on why your story matters, we had 10 out of 10. Love this. Awesome topic. Thanks for the great resources. That's from D.H. Stevens. And I don't know. What does that mean? That emoji symbol situation right there. I don't know what that means.
I think that's just like a face with a cute little nose.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, D.H. Stevens, we will reach out to you about getting you a mug. And Amy Dobson, 1917. Great conversation, y'all.
Aw.
Double hearts.
Double hearts.
Double hearts.
Wow.
So,
I feel so appreciated.
I do too. So we will get mugs out to all of them.
Nice.
And grateful for y'all. So like, share, subscribe. That's one of the best ways to help us
Yep.
here. And if you need anything at all, prayers, anything that we can do, don't feel any sort of way about it. Reach out. We would love to be there.
Yeah.
And we'll see you back here for another episode of the Afterchat.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for the Afterchat. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To be the first to hear our next episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button and get notifications for new content. You can also follow us on social media on Instagram at PCC Wired and Facebook at Passion Community Church. For additional resources and links, check out the description. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on The Afterchat.